All right, Chelsea fans, welcome back to another episode live after Chelsea's final
Mm.
preseason match heading into the 2024-2025 campaign for the club. That's right, your friends at the Lens Blue Podcast back at it. Dan here, along with Nick and our boy Sam, CFC Central, to chat through Enzo Maresca's, fortunately, not first loss at Stamford Bridge, thanks to some late heroics from Leslie Ugochukwu, making sure that it ended level, 1-1
You
apiece.
you mean our most creative number 8, Leslie Ugochukwu, Dan. Put some respect on his name,
That's
please.
what the streets are saying. That's what the streets are saying, Nick.
Delight.
They've been saying it for a long time, and now they've all come good on their predictions. But look, this is another one of our live streams that we're doing this season to get some quick reactions after it. We're going to break down just initial thoughts and feelings on this match. We'll talk about some of the risers who's really cementing themselves within Enzo Maresca's squad. We'll also talk maybe about some of those individuals who are still struggling to find their footing with this team. And then we'll just maybe get into a little bit of a preseason as a whole synopsis, because boy, oh boy, Chelsea have put us on a journey this preseason. And look, we didn't even travel to 4 or 5 different cities this time. So, I mean, that all that said, we love to start it with a 3-word match review. If you're in YouTube and you're hitting it live, leave a wonderful 3-word match review so we can react to those. But I'm going to throw it to you, Nick. Do you have a 3-word match review to sum up this match? Or it could be preseason as a whole, if you'd like.
I'm just going for today.
Okay.
And today is different than the other preseason matches. I think is fair to say. It was a better performance. Calmer with Palmer. We're back, baby. We're back. The passing on display. Just a delight to see him back on the pitch, not get hurt. Everything is okay again.
And Sam, you are one of the most erudite individuals that I know. Do you have your 3-word match review right now?
No, you've kind of put me on the spot. I wasn't really thinking of a three-word review, but yeah, I think everything was all right. Sort of like struck out to me as my three-word review because good to see Nico back, good to see Palmer coming back, and I was just about to write sort of like a tweet saying we've scored what 10 goals in 6 preseason games, and usually that would be an issue, sort of a worry going into the new season. But a fully fit Nico Jackson, Palmer, and Nkunku, you put them in any permutation or combination in that front three, and they will get you goals. So really good to see them coming on, and sparks sort of flew. I think we could have easily got like at least 1 or 2 goals from a couple of blinding instances. That Nkunku bicycle kick was really good. A couple of other nice saves. So yeah, just heading into that new season, having those three guys, ready to sort of play 60 minutes, always a good indication. So quite pleased. I think this is the happiest I've been through preseason, like most optimistic I've been through preseason. So yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to go with almost there, maybe. Like we're getting ready to start a season. We have a week from now, we will have played or be in the midst of finishing the match against Manchester City to start the Premier League season. And so we will know in short order how well the start of the Premier League campaign is going to look for our beloved Blues. And that's going to give us, hopefully, I think there's some optimism to take away from this result. Again, preseason is a fitness exercise. It's an opportunity to get people ready. Obviously, there are players we didn't see, like Reece James, due to some of the minor injury knock concerns that we've seen reported out of the Athletic before this match. But I guess maybe, Sam, just to kick it to you, you mentioned this idea of being happy with where we're ending preseason, being happy with where we're kind of the trajectory of the team is going, with how you're feeling about some of the attackers. Again, we only got to see Cole Palmer, Nkunku, and Nico Jackson for very brief cameos in this performance. But how do you feel? Maybe can you elaborate a little bit more on like why there's the positivity, what you're excited about after this match?
Yeah, I think happy is a strong word. I should have
Okay.
like people
Sorry,
keep saying
sorry for the
I was
oversell. I did not mean to
Better.
oversell.
When people say, "Oh, I was overwhelmed," and then they realize, "Oh, it's a strong word." And maybe I was just whelmed, like the right amount of whelmed.
Well,
That sort of like hits home. That sort of hits home for me. But I think the number one point I would take away from this game is somebody who's considered a very dogmatic manager, somebody who wants to play the game his way. sort of threw his blueprint in the bin. And that was what my number one takeaway was. He dismantled his inverted fullbacks, didn't see Gusto or Kukureya sort of go into midfield, which was again a refreshing change because I don't think either of those players fits that central midfield role. And to give them just maybe a little bit of a familiar role, Gusto bombing up on the right side. If you have Reese in that position, you have Gusto in that position, you're going to create at least two or three good opportunities a game. So maybe giving your attack a little bit of a help with that change. Kukureya again has played as a left centre back under Graham Potter. He's played there at Brighton as well. So a role that's familiar to him. And I think that was just a logical change, which sort of suits every single player that it was applied to. Again, having Enzo drop from a number 8 position next to Lavia, and you have two very, very strong progressors in that role. I thought that was a good change as well. And it again opens up the possibility of having a Caicedo plus Lavia or Caicedo plus Enzo pivot, which I think beats 19 teams in the Premier League for progression and sort of like press resistance. So again, that's where the hope comes from. You've suddenly opened up 4 or 5 slots where players are playing in a role that they like, that they're familiar with, and that sort of makes the unit better. So it's a good change. I really think just pinning all those, rigid kind of features is a step forward from Maresca. Hopefully, he'll be able to keep that through. And once that back five element improves, then you've got the front four to create a lot of havoc. So again, right amount of whelmed and optimism going into two huge games for the club.
And Nick, did this give you a whelming reaction as well in terms of where you're at and maybe some of the optimism that Sam speaks to with thinking about the trajectory of this team, but also with the players who are coming back into the lineup, and then the fact that Maresca did show some willingness to say, hey, I've tried some things this preseason. It hasn't worked or hasn't worked out fully. Let's make some adjustments to the lineup and see if we can get a different result.
Yeah, I would just first say, if you're in the audience on this live stream and want your voice to be heard, please put it in the comments, and producer Jake will bring as many of those forward as is possible during this live stream. I think the thing that I was most concerned about was the man-to-man press element of Maresca's system. I think I've been pretty clear about that throughout preseason, that up against Man City, for example, we were carved open very, very easily, and that is who we play next, right? So, like, as pragmatic as one can be, like, that really scared me. Today was a little less of that. Today was a little bit more collective, and there was still some press, up front in particular. Guiu still doing an incredible job of leading the line and bringing that press forward. Almost got a cheeky one today because he was pressing so hard, and I think he inspired those around him to go a little bit harder than they have been going as well. But I do think that Sam is right. A little adaptation goes a long way, right? Not only adaptation to the players that you have, and Chelsea clearly do not have a Man City style squad, right? And so the adaptation is going to take a while to get there, but also the adaptation to the league and understanding the Premier League is not the championship. We don't have the biggest, baddest squad in the league, right? And so you're going to have to think about ways to adjust to meet that moment. I was happier today than I have been for most of the preseason, which I'm sure will give our audience just great joy. But the thing that I'm hoping to see now is a progression, like a stage progression. I think Maresca probably, Dan, used the first few games of preseason to try and implement his style as Sam said, as rigidly as possible. We saw long periods of the inverted fullback next to Lavia, which provided him a ton of cover defensively. Today we saw a little less cover, and that was a big deal. So I hope that it is a stage progression. Maybe this is like version 1, and by the time that we get to Christmas, maybe we're at version 2.5 or 3, and it starts to look a little bit more cohesive.
Look, I don't know what software design team you're on, but boy, oh boy, in like 6 months shipping a 2.0 version, that doesn't happen. It's like 1.01, and then like those, it's really more staggered updates.
You don't get 4 years of Premier League football, Dan. This has to happen quick. You gotta just push send on that bad
Wrong
boy.
analogy to use. So, I mean, I think there are, again, a lot of positives to take away from this match. I mean, we talked about the fact that there was an adaptation and a willingness to change. I mean, I think Guiu definitely ends the preseason on a really strong high. I mean, I think
Yes.
the question that Craig was asking is like, hey, the changes were good tactically, but why the hell did it take so long? I mean, I think in general on this one, to me, the feeling is a lot of it came down to when players came back into the side, when they became available, and Maresca getting enough time to view the team with the closer to first choice players that we have in this side. So getting to see a Nkunku, getting to see a Palmer, getting to see individuals, Sam, that we would anticipate to be a part of that everyday match day squad that Chelsea's going to roll out with. And I think that maybe forced his hand to be a little bit more experimental over the start of the preseason, which is why maybe didn't see as many tactical changes in the earlier part of the preseason. Is that how you feel?
Yeah, both of us have done a lot of pods just before the preseason, and we did sort of mention that there would be a lot of tinkering in terms of where you want your players to fit. Enzo, for example, played on the left-hand side, on the right, same with Nkunku. He's also played, the 10, he's played as a center forward. And I think the same's applied to a lot of players where he's even tried Gusto at left back to see, what the change. And the post-match comment was, I was trying to see something. So it's been interesting from that perspective as an outsider looking in, saying, what exactly is the purpose of such an experiment? And again, it's good that he's come to the last game of the season and said, okay, this is what I've learned, and I'm going to try and put it together. I think there might be further changes, maybe like 3, 4 games into the season. Always happens when you're getting, say, somebody like a Samu coming in after 2 weeks, and Pedro Neto, I still don't know where he fits. So it'll be interesting to see if you've got Palmer
On
playing
the
the right hand
left.
side and
He's going to fit on the left, Sam. That's where.
yeah, I mean, you and I are doing a pod later on, aren't we? On Pedro Neto, so nice little plug on the stream. So yeah, I think it'll be again a thought experiment for him to figure out what does he provide on the left hand side. So I'm again a little worried. Um, but I think he's sort of like beaten me to a pulp over the first 5 games and then given me a little bit of hope in the sixth. So I still don't know how to feel about the preseason. I think defensive issues are still there. The centre backs um, don't look as imperious as they did or as we thought they should look individually. So yeah, I think just a matter of time before we iron those creases out. So yeah, I mean it's a complete hodgepodge of feelings to be honest, Dan. I really can't give you a definitive, tactical blueprint to say this is how we go into the season. Well, last season I was very confident saying this is how he's put out his 4-2-3 win against Dortmund. Okay, we lost
Sure.
one to injury, but this is how we go into the new season. This is what the roles are. And again, he had to change because we lost both our number 10s and then we lost Reese and then, injury after injury. But I really can't predict what is going to happen in the first 2 games of the season or how we set up against City or if Giu plays or Nkunku plays. So yeah, lots to sort of like speculate on.
This next question coming from the chat, Nick, we did from Tacoma Comics, who's I think a longtime listener. I feel like I see that name on Twitter quite regularly, but asking, did this match help determine our best back four? And I think the defense got cut through in that first goal. I mean, the whole team got cut through on the first goal and the only goal that Inter Milan scored pretty handedly. But I think in general, we've seen a lot of different variations in terms of what our defense has shaped up to be. I mean, Sam mentioned the idea that obviously Reese had been out injured. We've obviously got Tosin in the early part. We left Trev Chalobah at home. Like he's training with U21s. Like there's a lot of things that have and haven't gone right for this defensive lineup. And probably one of the biggest concerns is, can we get away from being a team that concedes a club record goals in a Premier League season? We would not want to do that in back-to-back years. So how are you feeling about maybe who are those individuals that you would highlight as our of those who have played, because I just want to rule Trev out because I feel like he's not in consideration right now. But like of the ones who participated in preseason, of the ones who played, like, do we feel like we're closer to a solidified back four, particularly with Malo Gusto looking so good again through preseason and I think today?
I mean, I think who your fullbacks are. For the life of me, and I'm just being as incredibly honest as I can be, I cannot pick two to start against City. I think that Fofana has looked incredibly wild out there in preseason, taking unnecessary risks. Levi hasn't covered himself in glory. I think he was a little bit better today, to be fair to him, but there's been some weirdness that's gone on there positionally, and the fact that he drops off so much. Batty Shields obviously had a nightmare. Haven't seen Disasi at all, and Tosin we just don't know that much about. I mean, when I was asked to put my best 11 together by a friend of the pod on Twitter earlier, I didn't name two center backs. I just said pick two, because honestly, I'm not sure that it really matters at this point. I think what mattered more today was the fact that Inter had very few clear-cut chances overall, and I think that was more of the system working together, which is good. Again, Inter blew away Serie A last season. They're a quite good squad, and I think they have some real talent on that squad. You saw who they were bringing off the bench. Like, they're not a joke. Like, they're really good, and they're going to be in the Champions League again this year, and we are not. So, I really don't know, Sam, if you have any sense of the best two center backs. I honestly, you might just pick it on vibes right now, because I haven't seen anyone put their stamp on it and say, I am absolutely a starting center back at Chelsea Football Club.
I'm absolutely with you on that. Like, at this point, you could do a raffle and then basically pick two names. And I still wouldn't be confident. And again, there is a clash of, I would say, profiles. I still think I don't know enough about Tosin. And at Fulham, when I saw his games, the hard part or the tactical responsibility asked of all our centre backs in this man marking system was actually done by his centre back partner, Calvin Bassey. So he's somebody who likes stepping off. He's in the Disasi kind of mold, likes being on the back foot, likes reading danger and then reacting to it as late as possible. And that's a skill set that's on the opposite end of the spectrum in terms of what you want to do. So playing somebody like a Colwell and Tosin together again will be a big question mark in competitive games. I'd love to see the dynamic if it works. Disasi, we've seen what happens when you ask him to be aggressive. Um, Based on potential, based on what I would say are the two best centre backs, it is Colwell and Fofana. And maybe that's why they started the first half together. You absolutely hit the nail on the head saying maybe Wes has not looked his best. I don't think he had a very good game today. I thought he was one of the poorest of all our players. So made some really bad decisions. And then again, your system expects you to take those risks, and there's a base there to negate anything that might happen in terms of circumstances. But it does hit you in the beginning when you're making mistakes and you're like, okay, I messed up. And with the defense that we've had last season, the amount of goals that we conceded, confidence is at an all-time low. It's absolutely, rock bottom has a basement when it comes to the Chelsea defense. So
Sam,
at this
I
point,
thought I was dragging us down. What the hell, man? Come on.
so you've got to give them, I think, something to build on. I think you have to
Rock
give them
bottom
something
has
to
a
build on.
basement, my guy. God damn, that's funny.
All right. Look, the thing is, we didn't lose this game. We scored a wonderful goal from Ugochukwu. Like, we have seen the return of Cole Palmer, which was very exciting. I think, you listen just to the very interesting audio feed in terms of the I'm just going to take 30 seconds to talk about charging for preseason games is very unfortunate. And, I know that there are costs associated with operating that, like you're paying people to facilitate that. But at the end of the day, like, you should want your supporters worldwide to watch the game as much as possible. So you should do that. And also maybe you should just don't, like, if you're going to charge for it, donate to charity or something. Like, that would be a really, really good thing for the club to do. And if you're going to charge for it, make sure that your audio and video is synced up appropriately, so it's not multiple seconds off. That is definitely not the best type of offering.
I was just gonna say it was lovely to hear two sets of commentary on.
Correct.
I heard Jason Cundy loud and clear throughout this entire match. I love him. I love Jason Cundy. Him and Ben were down there on their Chelsea TV bit, doing their thing, and so it was, yeah, that app experience is tough, and charging, I think it was what, £5 for it, or is it $5 US?
£5, 650 US. Yeah.
For that is tough, and obviously have great sympathy to all of our international supporters who had to do that for the previous 5 preseason matches that were in the United States. Like, it just feels like a bad experience right now.
All right, we've knocked it for that, but I think there are things that we can kind of talk about that were kind of continued positives. So obviously the return of Nico Jackson, positive; return of Cole Palmer, positive. I mean, I think in general, it was good to see that someone who has taken as much time off after the Euros and Cole Palmer comes in and looked very bright. I mean, I think he was not 100% up to speed. Just to be fair, I mean, there were a couple of passes that were, I would say, errant or maybe off target. But at the end of the day, him being on the pitch, this was like the like Eden Hazard vibe, like moment, right? Where like he's on the pitch and there are 3 players trying to figure out how to stop him, like on the side, and how much that creates for other players in this attack, how much that's going to provide others an opportunity to be successful this season, whether that's Nico Jackson, whether that's Samu, whether that's Pedro Neto. Like, Cole Palmer is going to continue to be a problem this season if teams are going to try to line up against him the way that Inter Milan provided and offered today. So, I mean, I think in general, Sam, if we talk about just the return of Cole Palmer, how excited that is and what that does for other attackers, what did you see within his, I would say, brief cameo that we saw today?
I think the hipster term for it is aura, and the technical term for it is gravity.
I thought
So
it was
when
vibes.
you do look at somebody who went double digits and almost gave Haaland a run for his money, like you mentioned, the moment he gets the ball, there are 3 people in absolute paranoia trying to make sure that he does not have an inch to breathe in, and that has knock-on effects everywhere else.
Mm-hmm.
Interestingly, I think Madueke also is sort of reaching that territory. I don't have his preseason stats, but there was this window somewhere in between his early Chelsea games that he was averaging 9 touches in the penalty box, which is absurd. And I think he's also come to a point where you're sort of bringing players to yourself, drawing them in and opening spaces inside the box. And Palmer does it better than anybody else. He sort of covers the entire right wing by himself, and with Gusto as support, I think it was great to have that experiment on lockdown, saying give him a little bit of width, and it works. Like he's definitely a genuine threat, starting wide, coming inside. So I think he's at this point our talisman. You look at the goal that he scored in the frugal minutes he got in the Euros. He can do anything with limited minutes. So I would go as far as to say, if you've got a Eden Hazard kind of influence, start him against City. He loves playing against them. He might have just limited minutes in his legs, but might just be worth the payoff at this point in time. And we've struggled for goals. So you generally, at this point, want to think that introducing him has you know, sort of like a galvanizing effect on all the other attackers.
Yeah, I was gonna say potentially, like, sorry, Dan, just like maybe he's a super sub against City. Like, what I worry about with all the guys that are just coming back, Jackson, Caicedo, him, like, it's a lot early. Like, City's the best team in the league. They're gonna again challenge for the title. Like, this is, the worst possible thing that could happen to me is we try and go for it against City, and a bunch of players who aren't necessarily physically ready, again, you saw Reece James get hurt during the week. Like, I want to reach Wolves with a team. Like, I want to reach the second game of the season with a squad that can compete. And so I'm kind of on the opposite side of you, but like that, I think either way, again, it lowered everyone's blood pressure in the stadium, Dan. It was great seeing.
Yeah, and I think combination with Nkunku as well. I mean, particularly the overhead kick with Jan Sommer having to do a ridiculous save, who again, just getting, if you're talking about aura, he got the opposing goalkeeper aura playing against Chelsea, which is kind of like the FIFA EA cheat code for goalkeepers.
He's so good. He's so good.
It was so good that Nkunku looks bright and continue to look to be heading into very fine form at the end of the preseason campaign, which is going to pay dividends this season. And maybe we'll even give Brandon an opportunity in preseason predictions to pick Nkunku this summer and say, hey, he'll be the top scorer or top goal contributor this season. And maybe be right as long as he stays healthy.
Can I make a quick point? And I'm curious what you think about this, Sam, because it's the end of the game. It's the last preseason game. I don't know if everyone was going full out, and so I'm trying not to read into this too much. But it seems as if for all of the, Palmer will play inside sort of vibes, that Nkunku's really gonna play inside. He'll be the attacker, attacking 8 or number 10 in that role, and maybe Palmer stays out wide on the right, or maybe they switch off at some points. What did you make of that? Because I guess I was surprised when Palmer came in that he didn't kind of slot immediately in there, and it was Nkunku still kind of in that adventurous role in the middle.
It is quite difficult, to be honest. Like, it's a conundrum to a point where I was already baffled, and then they threw Pedro Neto in the mix. So now I have absolutely no idea what, and a potential front four looks like, because you don't spend 60 million on a bench option. You do not. So there's clearly, like you mentioned, one gap in that front four, and that looks like it's the left wing. So Pedro Neto may be earmarked for that slot. And Kunku, again, if you are playing this 4-2-3-1, sort of 4-3-3, then the only option I see is like behind Nico Jackson. So I think that's the the role that has been earmarked. And again, you allow him to drift left or right in that left 8 position or the right 8 position. You give him the freedom to do what you want. Then again, we saw today a couple of instances where he tried to work out of possession and just completely got left behind. And that's the weakness that somebody has to cover in that number 10 position. Enzo again gives you a little bit more, not ideal, but a little bit more. Dewsbury Hall clearly not fit. But there's no other slot that I see for Nkunku. It's that either that number 10 in the 4-2-3-1 or the left 8. So it's going to be an uneasy fit. I think there are going to be games where out of possession you struggle. You're definitely going to see very good number 8s come up against Nkunku and make him work hard going the other way, and that's where he will be tested. So totally see him being an effective out of possession sort of presence there, but in attack I think he'd be spectacular. You're giving him the freedom to drift, you're placing him next to Nico Jackson, you're giving him enough space to run and ghost into the box. So he effectively is that unifying presence between the 3 other attackers, and he can link up with whoever he wants. And so you're maximizing, his output there. And if he gets you 15 goals, 15 assists, nobody will be mentioning out of possession ever come the end of the season.
I mean, all good points, I think, to consider. If we want to dive in, because I think there are other players who made their first appearance today, and we got a chance to see them again after a little bit of an absence. Marc Cucurella, rhymes with Estrella, had an opportunity to pop into the game as well. I think he looked generally ready to be a participant in that first game against City. And in general, I mean, if you're restricting a little bit more, I mean, there were some fun adventurous swashbuckling runs that we've gotten accustomed to, Nick, because he is a bit of a high risk, high reward player in that regard. You feel as if he's ready along on the opposite side to go heading into the first week of the Premier League season.
Yeah, you got the full Cucurella today. You got a lot. But yeah, I mean, I think the interesting part of this, and I think Sam touched on it earlier in the live stream. So welcome to those who have joined since. And please put your comments in. The thing that I liked about the positioning of both fullbacks is they did take turns in the way that they advanced, but it wasn't like they had to slot into a Tetris-like spot. Cucurella went as far forward as left wing at times and was all the way up there. He played through the midfield. And then he did stay back at times and just keep the kind of back line intact. And he looked fit. I mean, I think they took him off for precautionary reasons, like not to give him too much time too early because we have a big game next week. So, but he didn't look like he went on a binge drinking session after they won the Euros. He looked fit and ready to go. And I mean, based on what we've seen from the left back spot throughout preseason, it was easily the best, Sam, that I think we've seen up into this point. And so that is, for me, a really good sign that he's not going to necessarily take 15 years to get back. And maybe this will be, his opportunity to shine.
Yeah, absolutely. I had major concerns with how good he would have been inverting into midfield. Again, it's a good, nice sample size to have 5 games, but we've always seen that any kind of tactical innovation in one season usually does not translate into the next one. Teams prepare for it, they have a plan for it, and Kukurea, for all his amazing performances last season, is not somebody who can offer progressive sort of strengths. He's not a prolific carrier. He's not somebody who'll take that risk of dribbling through pressure. He's not somebody who'll try line breaking passes centrally. So if you're giving him that responsibility of an aggressive left centre back, which I think sort of suits his strengths, you ask him to push forward, and you've got two centre backs like West Fofana and Colville covering behind you. Then of course you're sort of maybe utilizing a stronger part of his skill set. So I think it's good to see him in that role, especially like being told, okay, if you do push up, if you do feel like there's a necessity to push up, then Gusto can always tuck in as that centre back. Caicedo can always like drop. Enzo can always drop next to Lavia, and you still have that 3-2. So good flexibility from Maresca to recognize that that needs to be done. And I thought Vega looked very good too in his cameo, especially from left back. And you want that additional option. He's also probably the best guy suited for that inverted role because he is a central midfielder. He's like a very tall Lewis Hall, I would say, sort of, going there and then putting in that crunching tackle on, I think, Dumfries next to the touchline that Stamford Bridge erupted and sort of cheered him on there. And he's also got like a really good passing range. So you've got two left back options, sort of, I would say, at a decent stage of readiness to go into the season. But yeah, Kukurai obviously has had a great summer. So expecting him to maybe like get 45 minutes and prepare for the next one.
Well,
I mean,
it is interesting, Dan. I'll toss this one back to you. Based on Friday's news, Reece James hamstring injury. I think PTSD for everyone who's followed that story the last few years. Maybe Chilwell not being a fit at all. I think we've seen him for like 45 minutes in preseason. Vega just coming to the club. We look awfully thin at fullback. If the worst case scenario happens, so a lot of matches this season. It's going to be interesting to see what happens on the fullback side. I still think there's an opportunity to potentially bring someone in.
To dip the toes into the transfer market once more. Look, Chelsea haven't signed a player in like 48 hours. So, I mean, we're obviously slacking in that regard because, again, we need about, 300 to, 300 Chelsea Spartans to take into the start of the season. And ultimately, at the end of the day, I think you cannot endear yourself more to the Stamford Bridge faithful than by putting in like a full-blooded challenge on a player. And so Vega, really nice opportunity for the Stamford Bridge debut to get involved there, to get stuck in and to maybe offer a little bit more than you should do in a preseason friendly. But, it's nice to see some of that energy. I mean, I think we've talked about this idea that the team in the past has not always, beaten their chest, not always kind of been a little bit more raucous, a little bit more kind of jumping into opportunities to have a little bit more bite in their fight. And ultimately this was, I think, a good thing to see. If we talk about though, the midfield, so we've seen a lot of different variations. We've seen, again, most creative midfielder Leslie Ugochukwu having an opportunity to really contribute in this preseason with his 2 goals. But we now know that Caicedo is back and healthy and looks to be ready to go to start this season. We've seen the good and bad of Lavia. We've seen an opportunity to see where Enzo can excel and where Enzo maybe is struggling a little bit at the moment. I mean, as you think about the midfield construction, Sam, heading into this game against Manchester City, how are you feeling about who is going to be used and, where they're at in terms of readiness? I feel like we see Caicedo looking extremely ready to go, even with the later, his later involvement into the preseason. I think we've seen, again, in possession, Lavia looks really good. Defensively, I think there's still some major concerns. And then Enzo looked like over the last 2 games starting to get a little bit more of that creative juice back in his involvement here, but still maybe figuring out how he gets involved, particularly as you talked about this idea of potentially, Nkunku coming in and being a part of that midfield is definitely like in the cards as well.
So if I were to rank in terms of what
Do it.
I sort of see the potential fit, obviously, look, Lavia has played the most amount of minutes in midfield. He's basically played almost every single preseason game. So I'm thinking he's being earmarked for that Harry Winks role. So I 100% see him starting as the deepest progressor. There's no other role that he can play in this midfield. I don't see him as somebody striding forward, attacking the box. So your hands are tied in terms of how you profile him. So he's probably locked down in that DM role. The second, for balance reasons, has to be Moises Caicedo. It has to be. Um, I don't see a Lavia Enzo pivot functioning very well out of possession against the top side, especially in transition where most of our weaknesses lie. You play one ball in behind or in between those 2 lines. I don't see them tracking back and offering you the kind of thrust that Moises Caicedo does. There was a tackle today. I don't know how Caicedo managed to contort himself to get that tackle in, but it was a thing of beauty. That man is, an acrobat, a gymnast, a brawler, all rolled into one. And you need, a bastard like him, pardon my French, in that midfield to offer you some kind of, defensive industry. And he's by far our strongest defensive transition threat. Somebody who's excellent at tracking back and wrecking attacks when you need them. He'll take yellows happily. He'll make those tactical fouls that you need in midfield. So um, the decision for me has to be either Enzo or Lavia plus Caicedo in that 2 slot. You cannot go all 3. I really, really think that that might be a mistake. But then again, those are the 3 most expensive transfers. So maybe there's a brief from upstairs saying, "Find a way, bro. I don't care. Like this is 200 million of my cash. Like find a way to make all of these click." But the only question for me is like what the front 4 will look like. Is it going to be Nkunku left wing, Enzo as the attacking midfielder plus Palmer on the right, or is it going to be Sterling on the left? Then you find Nkunku in the middle, and then you bench Enzo. So again, against Manchester City, that'll be a question that'll be answered very quickly. The next game, the Conference League game, that the playoff game that we have to play. Again, we're going to a very short trip. It's going to be Portugal or Switzerland, one of the two. And there's enough sort of like maybe leeway to then bench one of those pivots and play Enzo instead of Lavia, and then go with whoever else. Maybe an Ugochukwu after his performance today, and still have like 3 days to recover before the next game. So he has mentioned load management a lot. So maybe that's the way that you rotate your squad in the first initial month of the season when you're getting everybody back to 90 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at the midfield as a problem right now that needs a solution. Like, I don't know if Caicedo is the 6 that we hope for. I think we've had numerous conversations about that, and right now he's like the best that we got. John Obi Mikel is not walking through that door tomorrow, right? So I think there is a legitimate hole in the squad there. Enzo still, I can't figure out where he's going to thrive the most. Lavia is an absolute liability defensively. He is really good at moving the ball around, but not dynamically forward. I think, a lot of it's kind of short passing, that sort of thing. Dewsbury Hall, not really fit, it didn't look like. And so I think he's going to take some time to bed in, which isn't a problem. I think you have plenty of cover, but, we joked about Leslie Ugochukwu at the beginning, Dan. It's like, I don't know. Maybe it's not a joke. Maybe he's going to be with the squad this year, and other players who were set to be in that number 8 role, like a Carney or someone, might have to make way, because right now it feels unbalanced to me.
Yeah, and you think about the amount of loans that Chelsea are already getting started with, like Andre Santos going on loan. Obviously, we're signing players with the intent to put them on loan as well. So like you're already saying, hey, international loan spots of 6 or 7, let's just like lock those up real quick. And I think we have seen a little bit of a pivot to like, hey, how can we get them loaned in the Championship or get them loaned in the Premier League so that we can not use up all of our foreign loan spots when it comes to trying to thin out the amount of players that need to head out and get minutes this season. But when you think about the fact that you have a full Premier League season of 38 matches, you potentially have somewhere between an additional 20 to 30 matches that you could add on top of that, given the deep runs in FA Cup, in a Conference League, and then also in the UEFA Conference League. And like we definitely have plenty of matches for someone like Ugochukwu, like Giu, who could get 1,000+ minutes over the course of the campaign, because also there are players in here that are major risk injuries, right? Like hey, we did not see Lavia healthy for a full season. Now, obviously catastrophic injury. So like if you're out a full season, that kind of just is, maybe not indicative of your entire career, but you see people like Reece James, who missed a ton of time. Pedro Neto's coming in, as we talked about in the video we did earlier this week, still a major concern from, can he go a full season without picking up a major injury that takes him out for 10+ games at a time? Like there is a lot that still needs to be done to thin out. I think there are signs though of like, in my mind, of like who is not in consideration at this moment. And someone like Chukwuemeka not playing and not being involved, even though we saw maybe some periods last season where he looked to be a very creative, midfield player for us, not being involved at the back end of like this to me is the signal, Sam, that like he is on a trajectory out of Chelsea, whether that's on a loan or in a loan with an obligation or in a permanent move, that at the end of this window. Like I don't think he will be with the club in some capacity. So I think we're starting to see some of those players who will not be involved. Like, are there any others that you're kind of like at the point now where it's very clear that they are not going to be involved in this side, or should not be involved in this side, if we're going to get to our best 11 and also our best match day squad?
Yeah, we'll make that distinction. There are players I think should be involved, but I know won't be involved. Like the number one guy who stands out for me is Ben Chilwell. Hasn't played any minutes despite being fit. Again, he's also mentioned, Baresta's also mentioned that there is a delicate situation in terms of finding, the ideal fit for him, which is a pity because when he's completely fit, he's an absolute marvel to play. Goes both ways, offers you width, can also offer a lot of assists and goals if you give him the chance to. But again, injuries have ravaged him. We know his form hasn't been great, and he's lost that extra yard that made him the machine that he was. So with his high wages, with maybe he will go, unfortunately, the Gallagher Trev route where you ease him out and then make sure that there are suitors for him, and if you can flip him for a decent amount of money, then you will. Chukwuemeka again, no space in midfield at all. I do think if you do get a nice loan for him, you will explore it. But the price being touted for him is 20 million, Dan, and makes me think that that's the price that we got him for. So if we can get the same amount for him, yeah, so 20 million. So if you can break even on him, it looks good on the books. That's exactly how the guys up there think in terms of, yeah, the books look good for me. So let's have pure profit, make sure that we cover our netto costs and move on. So those two guys for me, definitely not in the picture. Interestingly, Kaisero went at right back today. I thought Achim Pong might come on. He did not. So is he sort of like also earmarked for a loan? And how many loans are we going to pull off before August ends? At this point, we have enough players to have like a conference team and like a league team. So generally don't know how that works. But yeah, those first teamers for me in particular sort of stand out in terms
Nick,
of not being in the plans.
on your end, who are those players that you think are kind of heading to maybe a short-term end to their Chelsea tenure, or more that long-term end? Are you in agreement with the players, like Chilwell, like Chukwuemeka, that Sam mentioned, or are there other players you're thinking about who are needing a loan potentially to revitalize like where they're at?
I mean, let's be clear. There's like 20 players who have to get sorted. Like, that's not a joke. That's 20 players, some of which will, I think, vacillate between the first team and the U23s. Like, I mean, that you don't have to do much with those guys. But if you want to, not do your international loan spots all at once, which I think we have 3 or 4 already allocated, if I'm remembering correctly. I think we have Wiley, I think we have Penders, I think we have Andre Santos, and then who's our last
Ansel
one?
Mina.
Yes.
Ansel Mina?
Yep.
Yeah.
So they're already almost full. So, I mean, you have very little flexibility internationally. I think you're probably selling Petrovic. You're probably selling Chilwell. You're probably selling Chalobah. Tino Andrin, as Matt Law confirmed, will likely leave. Cassidy looks likely to leave permanently. Carnes is rumored right now to leave permanently. Broya will likely leave permanently if they can find the right partner. Fofana, very much the same. That's David Detro, not Wesley. And then Romelu Lukaku. Like, that's a shit ton of business to do right there. That's just like sales. The loans are Kepa. I mean, I think Bergstrom, Beach is already gone. Akeem Bong, Wiley will go. Humphreys will likely go. He might be a sale, though. Kellyman, Ugochukwu, maybe. Who knows? Maybe he's our starting number 8 now. Angelo, Terry George, and David Washington. Like, all these players need minutes. So if the next 2.5 weeks are not spent just furiously scribbling down contracts, it will not be time well used. You basically caused this huge log jam as a sporting director group, and now you have to figure out what to do, and you're in a bad bargaining position because everyone knows that you got to do this. So back to square one a little bit there.
So a question in the chat from DJ Onyx with just, do you see Chelsea beating Man City? After all the evidence we have from our preseason, after what we've seen from City's preseason, for those not watching live, we're seeing Nick Fellaini with the most emphatic left to right head shake you maybe have seen from any individual on planet Earth at any time in history recorded. So I think that we've got your answer of a no. Maybe, Sam, do you think there's any possibility that you could see Chelsea with a shock or upset result? And again, this is one where our good friend producer Jake will be at the game, and so it would be really nice for him on that pilgrimage to Stamford Bridge for a Premier League match to get to see a win, even though I would imagine the odds are going to say that that's very unlikely.
Yeah, I mean, the logic and the rationale, sort of like every pragmatic part of me says no. But I did see the Community Shield game, and they were sort of missing a lot of key players. No Rodri for them, no Foden. So they do have a couple of issues in terms of availability, and Rodri is a huge miss. We all know what
Yeah.
happened when Pep benched him in Porto. So I'm hoping that has a similar, knock-on effect in this game. But I do think quality-wise, in terms of being established, and in terms of even the younger players coming in and just locking down spots with ease, Oscar Bob, for example, on the right wing, doesn't look like they miss any of the guys that are out. So they do have like the momentum, they do have the right coach, they do have years and years of stability. So I don't see us beating them at all. I'm hoping all the luck that we lost last season sort of, just completely turns around, and we end up with like a shithouse Burnley on the first day, Stamford Bridge kind of win. But that's just me dreaming. So I'm hoping Jake has a good one though.
Look, win or lose, pre and post match, if you're going to Stamford Bridge, it does become an enjoyable day out. It's just potentially the enjoyment is dampered maybe a tad. It's sad pints versus happy pints at the end of it, Nick.
Make your sad pints plan now. I think that's the critical thing. Have a plan either way, but really tuck into those sad pints. Maybe go to the Atlas, maybe see some of our regulars and enjoy a sad pint.
I mean, I almost feel like if you want to catch City like at any point, like this is
Dan,
I look,
Dan,
someone has to try to sell the optimistic view to counterbalance you a touch.
I
If you want to catch City at some point, the first match of the season, like anything possibly could happen because all the teams are in this like weird element of all the players not maybe being back fully, of players coming back from international duty, from maybe injuries, like being involved. Like there's a lot of question marks for all teams at the end of the preseason. I mean, City also had some crazy like losses during their preseason too. So like they don't look, you know, as perfect as they did at the end of last season when they went on their late run. So I mean, just again, if you want to catch them at any moment, if you want to hope for a little bit of luck transference, like Sam talked about, maybe this is the best opportunity and the best time to catch them.
Dan, it's not pessimism to say that City are better than we are and that we are not likely to win this game. Like I don't think that's pessimism.
But how many
that's
times
realism.
were we better than a side last season where we should have won? That win became a draw, that draw became a loss. I'm just asking for a little bit of the flip of the coin here to say, you know what, at the end of the day, like it's the first game of the season. Like it will be in front of the home crowd. It will be Enzo Maresca's first Premier League game. Like maybe there is a little bit of that magic that we could hope for.
I just hope we don't get routed.
You know what?
That would be
What?
That's my ideal. It's not the word. It's not the end of the world to lose the City the first game of the season. Like they're better than we are. I want to beat Wolves. Like I want to win that second game and really go out and make sure that we don't go winless throughout August. Like that to me is like the bigger priority, Sam. Like
Is that why we got Neto, just to make sure we win that second game?
the one game.
No, but like, yeah, I mean, I would have loved for us to leave, a footprint on Erling Haaland, but what did we do? We set up 2 goals for him. So, not the ideal preparation when you're facing the best front man in the world, inverted quotes. But again, like anything's possible, like you mentioned. I am an optimist. We do pods together, which is why, we gel better than Nick and Brandon, who are sort of like, the more pragmatic kind of minds on the pod. But yeah, I think they will certainly be a little weaker in midfield. I do think they were exploited a lot against United. They should have arguably lost it in 90 minutes. Rashford missed a sitter. Couple of other chances that they should have converted did not go their way, and that was like a trophy at stake. So that there's something definitely to be taken advantage of. But yeah, for all Pep comes in, even in his pre-match interview, says, "Oh, wow, the spaces between like Chelsea's midfield, excellent. Some compact, and he smashes the 6-0. So that's the humiliation I want to avoid. Just keep it, even a 1-0 loss is fine at this point in time, where you're getting Jackson to speed, when you're getting Palmer to speed. Get those guys in, avoid any injuries for the first month, and then push later on. I'm just like, it might sound very negative, but City do this every year, where they get off to a slow start. Arsenal become winter champions as usual, and then everybody's like, this is their year, and then City kick off. Like they absolutely kick off. And I think people underestimate just how brutally good it is to keep yourself fit, to get your basics right up until like November. And when that crowded part of the season starts, if you get momentum there, you turn it all around.
You saw the Sha'Carri Richardson look back. I mean, that's what City do to Arsenal every single year. It is incredible. I hope next week, like if we're talking about hopes for the first game of the season, I hope that it's competitive. I hope that we do not let them cut through us like a sieve multiple times. Like that is what I hope for. I don't think you're going to see a full strength Chelsea 11 for a couple of weeks because Palmer's just coming back. Jackson's just coming off the injury. Caicedo, same. Like we're just in this spot where we are not quite there yet. They are further along than we are for all the reasons that Dan mentioned earlier. If you're able to be competitive and show signs of life, like show real signs of life, show that you can play through them, show through that that you could be competitive in midfield. Those are the things next week that I will take away as like, okay, cool. Like there's something here, and we're starting to develop a a mentality and a style of play that can work in the Premier League. You know, like those sorts of things are great. If you somehow scrape a draw, phenomenal. Wow, what a result that would be. I don't think there's any chance of a win personally, but that's, you know, do you? Why not us train out there? I see you. We need you. We need you on this train. So you're welcome.
Oh, look, there's a whole lot of things that we're going to get a chance to talk about as we end this preseason and head into the start of another Premier League season, the 11th season of the London is Blue podcast that we're jumping into now. But this week we've got a bit of a journalist special. We're going to get into another Samu and Neto scouting pod that Nick and Sam are going to record. We also have our season predictions, where, of course, one of them will be immediately disproven. We'll just figure out which one of the three of us gets busted the earliest on our predictions.
I think it's my year.
I don't think I've had one, and I feel like it's probably time. I'm probably coming due at this point. Someone can remind me.
If it's
in
Brandon for the 4th
later.
year in a row, I would just be so delighted. It would be amazing.
The David Luiz and Nkunku ones are never going to be lived down. And then we're going to have a wonderful match review against Manchester City, a match preview as well. And then after that, we have the Chelsea women's preseason starting too. So there's a whole lot of content we have coming your way. We really appreciate you enjoying our wonderful live streams that we've been doing with you all. But that's going to wrap it for this one. We'll be at that women's game too. We'll be watching the Chelsea women play Gotham in New Jersey, not New York City. Someone appreciated the fact that I did make that distinction as a New Yorker, and they were very happy. But we're going to be, Nick and I will be at that match. So if you're going to be going, we'd love to say hello, hit us up on the comms, and we will definitely look out for you. But that's going to do it for this one. So thank you for enjoying us and joining us for this live stream. Appreciate everybody who heard this in the comments. Like and subscribe, leave comments, hit the bell icon to get notified. And then also do things like join our Discord community, get involved with our newsletter. Follow us on socials. Leave 5-star reviews on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. But that's going to do it for this one. So until next time, Chelsea fans, you know what to do. Keep the blue flag flying high.